I decided to make this video after watching a video by Laura Layla in which she explained that apparently there has been another fairly high profile case of somebody dying during plastic surgery, and she pointed out that she used that incident as a vehicle for expressing her observation that we have seemingly become obsessed with following beauty ideals, trying to conform to certain set ideas of what is or isn't beautiful, to the point where we are willing to risk our lives pursuing reaching such ideal body shapes, for example. And of course, if you think of it that way and you look at what has happened that way, it is natural to come to the conclusion of how can anybody possibly be so stupid that they run the risk of losing their lives in this pursuit. But maybe there is another way of looking at this, and it's just occurred to me as I was watching that video, it just sort of clicked with me to make a parallel with something else that does happen in our Western world. And this is a complete intuitive leap, an intuitive connection between two maybe completely unrelated things, and I could be completely wrong. What I'm going to say next is utter hypothesis and nothing else. But I thought maybe we can draw a parallel with, for example, something like an allergy. Now, as people have been observing, the incidence of allergies in our Western society seems to be increasing. And there are some people who hypothesize that this may be due to our almost excessive cleanliness. We have evolved immune system that are honed in on leading an existence, living a life on, say, the savannah. That's where our species evolved, and in that sort of an environment you are bound to come up against all sorts of pathogens, and your body needs to be able to cope with that. So we have developed a fairly strong and powerful immune system, and now we are living in luxury, in cleanliness, and our immune systems are still looking out for something to fight. And as some people hypothesize, this leads to our immune system sometimes running off the rails and running into overdrive over nothing really, and that is then what might result in allergic reactions. How true that is, I don't know, and I'm sure there are some people who put question marks against that. But let's explore that idea a little bit further in the light of what Laura Layla was just talking about there. Again, this may be something that is natural to us, that serves a useful process, but that has gotten out of control, that has gone off the rails, that has, gone into overdrive. After all, as human beings, as animals, one of the purposes that our genes imbue into us is to procreate. And of course, how do we procreate? One of the things we need to do to procreate is make ourselves attractive to members of the other sex. In other words, it pays in the evolutionary stakes to, for example, groom yourself, to pretty yourself up, to make sure you're clean, you're attractive, you don't stink, and so on and so forth. So there is a natural tendency already in all of us to pay some attention to our bodies and to make sure that we are at least clean, that there's nothing obviously wrong with this. Now imagine that tendency going into overdrive, being misdirected, being exaggerated or misapplied to something where it shouldn't be applied. And you do get disorders such as body dysmorphic disorder, where people start looking at something that is fairly normal, fairly ordinary, nothing to actually that you should actually worry about, and it becomes in their mind a huge problem that requires their attention and that they start obsessing over. And then when that process, the original process of grooming and keeping yourself clean and attractive to members of the other sex or whatever, when that gets out of hand, it turns into something destructive, into an obsession that might lead to you mutilating yourself, and ultimately to people mutilating themselves to the point where they might even die in the process. So maybe we should be a little bit careful. I don't know, again, I have to repeat, I don't know how valid this parallel even is. Whether I'm completely barking up the wrong tree. This is pure hypotheses. I'm just randomly guessing things here, but just throwing ideas out there and see what you think about them. That's all it is. But assuming that something like that could be behind what's going on, maybe it's a little bit too facile to simply point at somebody who is the victim of this and to say that was just stupid, to put it down to stupidity. Maybe there are people, there are processes involved that take over, that get out of control, and that you have very little control over, even consciously or through willpower or anything like that. So maybe we need to look at this with a little bit of a compassionate eye, even though of course it is very natural and understandable to look at a case like that and go, poor little rich girl, how stupid can you get? But maybe that's not entirely fair. Just a thought.